Finance Files, a podcast hosted by best friends Brittany Carter and Whitney Coford, with occasional appearances from Whit's dad, Greg Coford, and other guests.
We talk about all things finance, including investing, trading, economics, capital markets, and business management. Learn the investor mindset with us.
Disclaimer, this podcast is not investment advice. This is purely for entertainment purposes. Please do your research before making any sort of investment or financial decisions.
We're your hosts. I'm Whit.
And I'm Brit.
And today on Way Back Wednesday, Brittany's going to give us a rundown on budgeting.
So I thought it would be super interesting to see, obviously it's going to be hard to do the whole world, but so sorry if we have any international listeners on our, or a few episodes in podcast. But I just looked at how America has spent money. The Atlantic had this incredible article called How America Spends Money, 100 Years in the Life of the Family Budget. And I think it was really well done. So we'll link it in the show notes. But basically, in the 1900s, we basically a quarter of households have running water. So that alone, like if you're feeling down and out about life, maybe just think about the fact that only a quarter of households even had running water in the 1900s. Like they always talk about how even quote unquote poverty these days, we have so many amenities that we just take for granted. Like running water was not a thing. What I thought was really interesting is very few, like fewer than even that quarter owned the home they lived in. So I think we've always talked about the American dream and this idea that like owning a home is the American dream. That really wasn't the case in the 1900s. And yeah, only 1/12 of households had gas or electric lights. 1/20 had telephones. 1 in 90 owned a car, and no one owns a television because it's the 1900s. So I thought that was
so their bills were super low, right? If you don't have indoor plumbing and electricity and gas, like there's no bills.
True. But here's the real kicker. Whitney, how much do you think in the 1900s Americans spent on food?
All right. Well, I'm not going to be good at guessing, like taking into account inflation, but if I'm doing percentage, like maybe like 50% of their income on food.
43%. So I'm surprised you picked high. See,
yeah, well, because I was like, if they don't have any other bills and their salary is probably not that high, then most of their budget is probably food. That was my reasoning.
Okay. I was surprised. Anyway, so yeah, so basically 43% on food, 23% on housing, which seems pretty in line with what we had before, 14% on apparel, but yeah, they aren't 2% entertainment, 5% healthcare, but long story short, like I was surprised personally on that. But basically, it was just a lot of farming, right? And like almost half of the country worked in agriculture at this time. And the services economy, which the US is now known for, was really not there quite then. It was definitely just agriculture. And then we moved from like industrialization as time went on to more of a services economy. But I think that's another thing to think about is the US was kind of built off the Industrial Revolution. We used to be the manufacturing powerhouse of the world, and that's very much shifted to China. And then we changed to services, which is super interesting to look at, like just from a perspective. Okay, so now we're in the 1950s.
What's included in, like, what is services? What qualifies as
services industry? Like tech. So example, like FANG companies, like well, I guess Apple manufactures their products, but you look at like the App Store and like Salesforce and even just like all the different like salesmen that are like selling the product rather than manufacturing it. Those are all like services, right? Okay, so 1950s. How much do you think food is as a part of the budget now?
I feel like it would be less. Like, I feel like in the 1950s, people would have been more likely to like buy their house. Yeah. So I'm gonna go with 35%.
Kind of close. All right, 30%. So yes,
I'm so good
uh,
at this
so
game.
did go down. And then yeah, the housing went to 28%.
And
So
what was it? It was 24% in the 1900s?
23. So it
23.
rose. Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of that did have to do with home ownership, which we'll get into a bit more when we look at the next part of this. But 20, yeah, so 28%. And then essentially what happened is food got cheaper because the tractor and a lot of other mechanization, is that right?
Yeah, that sounds like a
Mechanization
word.
uh, occurred during this time, so it was able to reduce the cost of food. Like I think that we really forget. Like as someone who I like did my brief stint on a farm, I can tell you it's so hard to grow food. Like we really don't realize how much just having machines to help expedite like improve things makes such a difference. But yeah, so at this point now the economy's shifted. Not as many people are in agriculture because of this automation. So half of them are craftsmen or operators. And this is textile manufacturing's at its peak. Like we were the manufacturing capital of the world at this point, which is it's just so funny to like I'm sure everyone at that point was like, we are the manufacturing economy of the world. And it's so crazy how that just completely shifted.
Did you
Uh,
say 50% of people had jobs as operators, or
as
what was the other?
craftsmen or operators.
Wow, that's crazy. 50% of the entire US population.
Yeah, we were very much focused on manufacturing as a country, which has completely shifted. But yeah, I just think it's funny. Like you look at, I think what was most interesting as we head into 2003 is like what we have considered the American dream, right? I feel like we don't realize how much that American dream has changed over all these years, right?
Leave
Like
it to us to just keep moving the goalposts.
well, I just thought it was so funny that like most people rented when I looked in the 1900s because when I think of the American dream, I think of all these people going out west and staking their land, and that like that was the big thing. But like if you look at actual budgets and what this is saying, like most people actually didn't own their home or anything. I don't know. I just thought it was super interesting. Like we've kind of created that from the more recent years, right? So now, so it used to be that most 80% of families were renters. Now more than 60% of families are homeowners. Like in the stat was from 2003. That's like
Mhm.
such a shift. And now we are like, oh, the American dream is to own a home. But in the early 1900s, that wasn't the case at all. I thought that was super interesting. Like
That is
I don't
interesting.
know how much of the American dream was really the American dream when founding fathers said everything. So
And they were like, we just want a new country. It's fine if we have to rent.
yeah, I mean clearly there wasn't I mean I'd be curious too, like we're not going that far back, right? The 1900s, like this isn't
Yeah.
founding fathers, don't worry guys. I'm sure there's gonna be someone like with like pitchforks in the
Wrong year.
yeah. But I did think that was just, it's clearly evolved over time. And I thought the fact that there were so many renters when there's like kind of this debate rent versus buy in a lot of cities, just because of how expensive real estate's gotten, that um, even as a country, we have gone through phases where way more people were renting. So,
Yeah.
right.
It's like a pendulum, right? Like, I feel
Yeah,
like the economy and society, it just like swings one way and then it swings back the other way. So, and as a relatively new homeowner, I can say there are pros and cons to renting and there are pros and cons to owning a home. So,
yeah,
it's not a one shoe fits all type of situation.
for sure. All right. Now, here's the real kicker. We're in 2003, Whitney. How much are we spending on food?
I'm gonna go with 15%.
Wow, bravo, 13%.
I didn't even read the notes in advance, by the way. This is all guessing.
I really, I thought when you said the half of the meme, I'm like, "Ugh, she read it. Like,
No, I read nothing. I came
okay.
completely unprepared to
But
learn.
well, I think too though, I mean, if you think too, 2003, we were alive. It wasn't like I think it's pretty in line with what the budgets are now. But yeah, housing jumped up to 33%, um, which, makes sense when more people are owning their homes. Um, we are spending less money on apparel. I thought that was interesting that apparel dropped from like 12% in 1950 to 4%. And I think it's interesting to think about that because we've got such a consumer culture, but it's because we started offshoring everything.
Yeah,
So,
I was gonna say, I feel like fast fashion is partially responsible for that drop.
exactly. So fast fashion's become like way more of a thing because I don't think we've actually reduced our spending. It's just that it's become cheaper, kind of similar to how like food dropped because we were able to mechanize a lot of it and make it
Right.
yeah, less expensive. So that is kind of how we have adjusted as a country where we're spending money. The thing that I found interesting too was automobile ownership. One in 90 people owned a car back in the 1900s, but now practically everyone owns a car. And I don't know about you, but that's one of my largest expenses by far. And it's become a necessity. And part of that's because there's this whole thing talking about how cities have become bigger than they used to be because we didn't have cars back then. But the fact of the matter is, like, most people own a car. I did not have a car for the first 5 years I lived in Los Angeles. I'm still not quite sure how I did it. Um, no, like
Yeah.
everyone's like, wait, what? And I honestly, I don't know how I did it now.
You know what, though? I haven't had a car for the past year. That's the first time, I think, since I was 16 that I haven't had a car. And like, you adapt. You just like figure out how to make your life work without a car.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think too, I was very strategic. I also lived right next to the beach, guys. So it was like my commute to work was a 15-minute bike ride along the beach. I was not, don't be
Rough
like
life.
River didn't have a car. Like I just didn't see the need because it's such a pain with parking and everything. And then I would walk to the grocery store. I love walking. That's the other thing too. I live in LA. It's sunny and gorgeous all the time. So I just kind of made it work. But yeah, like after I got the car, I was like, wow, this is expensive. Like even after I paid off my car, I was like, still expensive. You got like
Gas,
registration,
insurance,
insurance,
repairs, maintenance.
gas.
Yeah.
Oh, it's yeah. But I do think it's interesting. Like we say, oh, we need XYZ, but you look at like X years ago, we didn't need it, and things have changed, infrastructure changed, and things like that. But it is kind of, I thought it was super interesting to see how we've changed in terms of spending over the years.
Yeah. So I guess overall, it sounds like the amount, the percentage spent on food decreased.
Yep.
But obviously, like the amount of food we consume as individuals probably hasn't changed that much. I mean,
It's
maybe. I guess
increased.
obesity has gone up, so there's
Yeah.
that. But okay, so food changed. Was there anything that stayed relatively stable? It sounds like it all kind of alternated as time went on.
Healthcare has stayed at like it's stayed at about 5% and then it increased slightly to 6% in 2003. But healthcare actually stayed pretty consistent. But yeah, food and apparel all dropped in pricing. Housing increased, and then entertainment is kind of just like fluctuated around it was only 2% in 1900s. I'm sure there were only so many entertaining things to do back then if half of them were farmers. But yeah, but it looks like entertainment in the 50s and now has stayed consistently around 5%. So, I mean, it sounds like we've actually gotten like way more stuff for less money. So, congratulations, guys. You didn't have to be born where running water was a hot, exclusively for the rich.
Yeah, definitely take for granted some of our modern necessities. So It's a good reminder to appreciate what we have. All right, Britt. Well, thanks for that history lesson and the impromptu quiz. Glad I passed.
I was very impressed. I was not, I was totally off when I like looked. I was like, wait, this is, yeah.
It was just got beginner's luck. Beginner's luck. Yeah. All right. Well, join us tomorrow for Think Like an Investor Thursday, and we'll talk more about how to budget like an investor.